help executives in small to mid-sized businesses make sense of the ever-changing and evolving cybersecurity landscape. I'm sure you've all seen it in the headlines these days. So we're here to help you reduce those security breaches and just find a way to make sense of it all. Now, as always, following each discussion with our expert panelists, we will have a Q&A session. So if something strikes your fancy during the conversation, be sure to put it in the chat down there, and we will answer as many questions as we have time for. Now, on today's menu, a delectable entree, we're going to discuss how to use employee training to reduce security risk. Definitely not on the kiddie menu. So let's meet the chefs in the kitchen, as we say. Let me bring in, let me go to my handy dandy control here and bring in Chad Wiggins. Chad is a co-founder and partner of PulseOne. And today he's going to be talking with, here we go, Roger Grimes. Roger Grimes is a data-driven defense evangelist and George Clooney lookalike for KnowBe4. Welcome, Roger, and welcome, Chad.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks again, Roger, for joining us and letting me pepper you with some questions. And thanks, Eric. We'll take it away from here.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. The floor is yours.
So a little bit more about Roger. Roger's been in the computer security industry, veteran for 33 years. He's written 13 books, over 1,200 magazine articles on computer security. So I think Roger's got something to say. What is that? You've earned your stripes.
All the gray hairs. I'm an old man. That's how I got it. I just stayed alive. Eventually it happened.
So Roger, you work for, or you're with KnowBe4, and it's all about employee and training on social engineering and training on how to avoid computer scams and security breaches and all that. Can you give us a little lay of the land of some of the statistics you and I have gone over about companies that train versus companies that don't train their employees, and a little bit of that?
Yeah, sure. Since the beginning of computers, the number one way that people get hacked by hackers or malware is social engineering. It's like 70 to 90% of today's successful data breaches involve social engineering of some sort. It's number one by far. Number two is unpatched software. That's involved in about 20 to 40%. And then nothing else comes close. Matter of fact, everything else added up altogether doesn't equate to 10% of the risk. But the, at least the customers that come to us, so people that say, hey, I want, we're interested in your security awareness training, which just means we're educating them with videos and games and stuff. Plus we send simulated phishing attacks where, we see if they can be tricked, and if they're tricked and they click on a link or something, they get more training. It's all automated. But the average customer that comes to us, about over a third of their employee workforce can be easily socially engineered. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny when they come on, we're like, oh, we're going to do what's called a baseline test. And we send out this phishing test that almost always the admin's like, almost no one's going to click on this. There's typos everywhere. It's not coming from a domain that's our domain, and blah, blah, blah. And then when over 30% click on it, I mean, it's usually like 31, 35, 40. They're like, wow, it's much worse than we thought. And then we say, okay, every year when they get hired, and every year give them longer training, like, 30, 45 minutes, an hour or something. But then every month, just do like 1 to 3 minutes about a particular issue that's a hot topic. And then, wait a while and send the simulated phishing attack that's kind of around that same topic and see how well. Because part of the problem is there are some people that never click on a phishing email, and then you have other people that click on every phishing email, and like, how do you get the training to them? So that's what we kind of do. We help you get focused on the training. And after our customers do it, and it's not some of the customers, it's not our best customers. It's like every customer that does what we say, which is, monthly training with some simulated phishing, significantly reduces the risk. So it's it's an easy thing to see. It's very quick, and efficient. It's nothing you don't have to guess about. Is it working? You can literally go, oh, I have less people failing my phishing test.
Yeah. We use KnowBe4 internally, and we have our clients use KnowBe4, and it's been really surprising, eye-opening on how aggressive someone wants to click on the bad link. Like, they're just determined as all hell to want to get phished and scammed. But then once they're trained, you were saying that they go from a company going from 70% being social engineered and hacked, and then once employees have that monthly training, gets down to less than 5%.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I think the average again is about, it depends on the period and stuff and the industry, but it's somewhere between the average of 30 to maybe 40%. So it's not 70%, although I've heard those figures. And then I've heard people getting it down to, usually they're below 5%. I've heard some people go below 1%. And let me say, it's different people. Even me, I've been at KnowBe4 for 5 years, and I was like, when I joined, I'm like, they're never going to fish me. I'm unfishable. They fished me successfully the second day I was there. I was like, oh, okay. But even then, I thought like I wasn't fishable. I said, okay, I fell for this mistake. It had this thing, blah, 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 blah. And I think I convinced myself, I made a mistake, whatever. Then they got me again. And it literally taught me I'm fishable, one of the most knowledgeable computer security experts in the world, if I'm appropriately motivated. I think they got me twice on like, get your COVID shot, and there's no COVID shots. I was like, what do you mean? There's no, they were telling me, and I was like, click, and then I found out, oh my God, if I'm motivated, and I'm like, what do they mean COVID shots? There's no COVID shots available then. This is back when they weren't available. But I thought, oh, it turns out I have a trigger. Like if you can trigger me into going, these stupid people, that was the way to get me. And I learned, it's funny. What I learned is I'm fishable. And in learning that, it made me slow down. So I really do hover over every link now. And I kind of thought I did, but if appropriately motivated, I didn't. But I learned, like I had to learn that I was hackable, I was fishable, and it even changed my perception about myself. And now I think I'm a safer employee.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we train someone to avoid all the different types of social engineering and scams that are out there?
Well, overall, you have to create a culture where every employee just has kind of a healthy skepticism that knows, you have to educate them that, hey, you can be scammed in email. You can be scammed on a compromised website. You can be scammed in an SMS text message. You can be scammed in somebody calling you and saying they're from Microsoft and they've detected a virus. So the first part of it is really true. It's security awareness. Security awareness training is making you aware about different types of scams. Like if you don't know that Microsoft never calls anybody to tell them that they have a virus, then you're more likely to fall for that scam. So the first part is just making people aware of the different types of scams. I also think what I teach people is really want to teach two things. Anytime a message arrives unexpectedly, you were not expecting it, you didn't want it to come, you didn't know that it was coming. So the message arrives unexpectedly, no matter how it arrives, text, email, phone call, whatever. If it's asking you to do something that you've never done before for the requester, so even if you think it's your boss, even if you think it's Microsoft or Twitter or Instagram, if they're asking you to open something, do something, verify an account or something like that, if it arrives unexpectedly, they're asking you to do something that you've never done before for that requester, slow down, realize that that particular message is higher risk than anything else. And it may be a legitimate message. Your boss is telling you to go buy something or whatever, but just know that it's higher risk, and to slow down, hover over links, research, call the person on a known good phone number, go directly to the website. If Microsoft or Instagram says your account is locked or hacked, actually go to the website, don't click on the link in the email, and find out, is that really true? So that's really, you want to create a culture where everybody has a healthy level of skepticism, that they're aware that scams are rampant on the internet and email and even voice calls. And, and that you start to realize what is the traits of a scam, what could be the triggering events for yourself, right? Because different people might be triggered by different things. And so that's what you do. And and again, it's really not that hard. I think it's like when you got your kid and you're teaching them to go across the street, you tell them look right and left and then right again. And pretty soon they catch on. And within a year, they're looking right, left, right, and the rest of their lives. Same thing here. Once you teach the skills, hopefully people are doing it innately and not even realizing they're doing it. Well,
and we hear too from certain IT people, network engineers say, oh, we have all the cybersecurity we need. It'll block all of that. It'll block those social engineering, the phishing scams. We have that cybersecurity controls in place. So I don't think we need to train our employees. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a reason why social engineering is 70 to 90% of the attacks, and that's because it works. There is no So I've been doing this 34 years, going on 35. There is no technical control, security defense, firewall, VPN, or whatever that cannot be bypassed by a human doing something wrong. Like a really good example is a couple of years ago when push-based multi-factor authentication came out. That's where you get this little message on your phone, and it's like, is this you logging in? And it may tell you what operating system you have, what your IP address is, maybe your browser. Is this you logging on? Approve or deny? It's called push-based authentication. When I first saw that a couple of years ago, I thought, man, that's really good stuff. And I wrote a book called Hacking Multi-Factor Authentication, and I put that in there, a chapter on there. I went, hey, this is good stuff. This is among the better stuff. This is before the industry realized that a non-small percentage of people would approve a message when they're not logging in. Turns out upwards to 30% of people, when they get a push-based message, will always say yes, even if it's not them.
Even if they didn't initiate it.
Yeah. And it's been used to and I said, we're not talking small podunk places. We're talking every business that uses it. And it's been used to compromise. Dropbox just had, they had another MFA compromise. So this is a social engineering MFA compromise, but it was used to compromise Cisco Talus, Twitter. There's been lots of things. And what's interesting is the only way to defeat that attack, there is no technological defense, although they're trying to come up with one. It's really simple. Tell your end user, hey, never approve a login that you yourself did not initiate, because there's a lot of scams where they're breaking into companies by tricking people to saying yes when that person's not logging in. We will never ask you to log on in with a login that you didn't initiate. We will never call you on the phone and tell you that we're from IT and that we need you to approve a login so we can install something. Never say yes if you did not initiate the login. And so literally a couple of minutes of education, and all of a sudden you have a much more, lower risk user, because they're aware of the threats and they know how to defeat it.
So you were telling also that where they blast you those text messages like 50, 100 in the middle of the night, and you're like, go away. So you hit yes, right?
Yeah, they call it push-based fatigue, or MFA fatigue, or MFA bombing, or something like that. And that's where, I think all of us have been caught up in some IT error where there's a batch file or a user account to get updated. All of a sudden we got all these warnings or messages. So what the attackers will do is send a ton of alerts. They'll try to log in 100 times. And so at home, they'll usually do it at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe on a holiday. And so you're just getting these messages and you keep saying, no, deny. But eventually like, what's going on? Let me see if I hit approve, whether that will make the prompts go away. And indeed it does. But that's where you have to say, listen, even if it was an error, do not ever, don't say approve. And let me say, there's just simply some scams that there's no amount of technology that's going to fix. Phone scam coming to you. A common one around my area, I live around Tampa, Florida, is somebody will call people and say, we're from Duke Energy, that's who provides their energy, and said, your bill didn't pass, and we're going to cut your electricity off within the hour unless you pay us with gift cards. And you're like, who in the world would think that an electricity company is going to request gift cards to pay the bill? About 10% of the people they call. I actually called a couple of them. I texted, emailed, and called a couple of victims. I said, I just got to know. And let me say, some of them said, I'm the last person I thought that'd ever be scammed, And then you're like,
right.
Well, because for me, it appears that anybody would know this was a scam, but they all had their reasons. Like, one guy said, I was picking up my mother, she had cancer, and I knew it was a billing mistake, but I didn't want her to come home to a dark house because she was getting out of cancer recovery. Another person said, my husband's always paying the bills late, and stuff like that. It's like each person had this, and I thought, it's just like me being tricked by the shot thing or whatever. It was just, if you're appropriately motivated, caught in the moment, you can be compromised. But if you tell people, if you actually make people aware, hey, there's a scammer that will call you claiming to be from an electricity company and wants you to pay with a gift card, you're not going to fall for it. Or like Craigslist people. I think how many of us have heard our friends go, I sold this on Craigslist, or I bought it on Craigslist, and you go to Craigslist and you put up something and immediately you get in this email going, I will pay full price and pay shipping. Let's see if, send me an email so I can connect you with my escrow agent. If you don't know, it's almost always the first person connecting to you on Craigslist is a scammer. And if you don't know that, you're more likely to get scammed by the scammer with it. Hey, I'm going to send you the check right away, but it's going to be more for the amount. Go deposit that check and send me the extra, and keep a little extra for your, your hardship. But that really is where it comes down to. Let me say, well, I've been doing this 34 years. Before I came to KnowBe4 about 5 years ago. Before that, I was with Microsoft for 10, 11 years. And I was installing the most advanced security systems. I was installing multi-factor authentication, smart cards, the best Windows technology, intrusion detection, firewalls, VPNs. I was doing it successfully. My clients loved me, putting in this most advanced intrusion detection technology. In every case, every one of those customers got hacked. How? Social engineering and unpatched software. And I began to say to myself, wow, I thought I was helping my end users, but I started to get depressed going, they're all still getting hacked, even though I'm trying my best. And that's literally, I quit Microsoft and went to work for KnowBe4, literally because of that. I was like, you know what? The majority of the problem, and I've been collecting data for 20 years, is social engineering. It always has been, always probably will be. And I was like, I'm working on the wrong problem. I'm solving a 1% problem of who might abuse some advanced MFA thing that's really advanced. And I'm not tackling that, hey, this common thing is that it's just people being tricked and people being scammed, right? It's human behavior. And, if I hadn't made it at KnowBe4, I would have gone to work for a patching company, apparently. But, that's what it came down to. I finally realized the major problem was trying to educate people. And let me say, no matter how good you think your technology, I even thought phishing 30 years ago. A friend of mine said, I'm going to go create a company that fights phishing. And I said, no, we're getting ready to defeat all that. We're getting ready to stop all that. We're getting all the technology and all the stuff's coming along. I laugh, like, thank God that guy ignored my suggestion and you made millions and millions of dollars. But I hear people today going, we're going to stop phishing. I have this idea phishing will be gone next year. I'm like, I think I wrote that article 3 times in my life.
Yeah.
Oh, and passwords will be gone soon.
Yeah. No. So we keep saying the phrase social engineering. Can you define that for our listeners?
Sure. Yeah. Social engineering is a scam, a con, where somebody you don't know, well, hopefully you don't know them, is pretending to be someone or a brand that you might trust more than if you knew that the scam was coming from Nigeria or Russia, from a person you don't know. So they're pretending to be your boss, your friend, a loved one, a nephew, or Microsoft, or Instagram, or Twitter, or the IRS, or the law enforcement, or the energy, the Tampa, Duke Energy in Tampa. So they're pretending to be somebody that they're not, and they're trying to get you to perform an action that is harmful to either your own interest or your company's interest. So typically, probably half of that is to try to provide a password to something. They'll claim to be Microsoft or Google, Instagram, and they want you to log in and check something, and they're collecting your login name and password. That's about half of them. About another quarter is they're going to try to get you to download a malicious program called a Trojan horse program. It could be open a document or something, but inside of that, there's some code that we call malware that will then take control of your system or collect your passwords or allow them to have remote control of it. And then about another quarter is maybe providing your social security number, providing some personal identification information, providing your credit card information. So that's what it is. So it's a scam or a con, pretending to be somebody you might trust more that's trying to get you to perform some action that's going to harm your interest or your company's interest.
And they know a little bit of information about you, right? So they know your name, they know where you work, they know your email address. How are they getting that information?
Yeah, so probably at least 50% of it is just this wild guess, and they send it out like it's just they don't know anything about you. The average phishing gang, and there's thousands of them, sends out about 60,000 emails a day. And many times they don't know stuff about you. But then you have the other ones, or even within the same groups, that are like, hey, if we have more information, if we know your name, if I send you an email or a text message and I include your first name, you're like, oh, it must be legitimate. They have my first name. Or I got called one time by somebody goes, hi, Roger, we're with your bank, JP Morgan Bank. Well, I'm not going to tell everybody my real bank, but they said from your bank. And did you get 2 tickets from Dallas, Texas to Nigeria this morning? I said, no. And they said, well, don't worry, Mr. Grimes. We think we know your account's been compromised. You're a valued customer. We're going to Fed Express you credit cards overnight. But we see that there's $50,000 of transactions here. And we want to find out from you which ones we should pay and which ones we shouldn't pay. I'm like, oh, this is great. They said, can we have your login name? So I gave them that. They said, what's your password? I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to tell you. But they said, okay, we're going to just send you a code, Mr. Grimes, and just repeat the code. We're going to send it to your previously registered phone number. What they were doing was trying to reset my password on that bank account. And I put them on hold. I then went into my bank account, just logged in with my login name and password. And I saw I didn't have any of those, flaky transactions. But what they had done is put my account in recovery mode. And had I given them that code, they would have reset my account and password and taken all my money. But so that's just, you just got to be careful,
And are they getting our information off the dark web? Like our information somehow has gotten out there and it's for sale, and that's why they're contacting you?
Yeah. Let me say, if you've been on the internet longer than 10 years, even your passwords, right? Like I've never been, as far as I know, successfully socially engineered in a real life attack, but my password has been compromised 11 or 12 times, not because of anything I did, but because Twitter got hacked, Facebook got hacked, Adobe.com got hacked, so these other websites that belong to got hacked. So there are literally tens of billions of login names and passwords out there, probably including yours. So I used to think I was smart, and I would say, I would make my password. They're like, make your password different for every website. So I would do like, let's say Frog TW for Twitter, Frog FB for Facebook, Frog I for Instagram or whatever. I said, I'm using a different password, but I don't have to write it down because I remember what it is. Well, then I looked at all my passwords that have been found on the internet, and they're all frog something with with another digit. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't take a hacker. Doesn't have to be a genius to go, let's try frog A on Amazon. But yeah, they do. There are free websites and there are paid sites. There's sites, it may be shocking to people. There's probably 200 companies where I can pay a small fee if I subscribe to them, $15, and find out everything on you. I can find out where you live, where you work, where you drive during the day, your credit card purchasing habits, your credit card numbers, your passwords, and hackers have those same tools. And there's just a ton of data leaks, right? Like I think I've lived in my current house for 2 years now, and I have a credit card monitoring service, and my mortgage information for my new mortgage has been stolen by hackers like a dozen times. So, anything I put in my mortgage application, which is like my life, is out there on the internet, on the dark web. But so it could be dark web, it could be regular internet. And then there are these commercial services. Like I tell people, you can actually be tracked on your phone by some of your applications. Your applications have what's called an app ID, and some of them can be used to track your location, even if you turn your location services off. But literally, I subscribe to the site, and it will say, this is where this person lives, this is where they work, this is where they go to school. It's just built into the product, along with anything like your credit cards, your credit card information, what you bought at Amazon. And it's not even through Amazon per se, or what you bought at different stores and Barnes and Noble, but they're compromising purchasing databases that track your credit history and stuff like that. And once it's out there, it's just out there forever, right?
Yeah. So we are going to get social engineered in our lifetime. We are going to get scammed, and basically it's up to us to be trained enough to avoid those scams, right?
As best you can. And let me say, I think just having that healthy awareness that you can't trust emails, you can't trust the internet, you can't trust phone calls, you can't trust SMS messages, being aware of that, I think has made me safer. And I try to share that with my company and my friends and my family and, my parents when they were alive. You try to share that. And I do think just having that general level of skepticism, a general level of awareness does help make you safer and, more likely to protect your information.
So what's the regular training interval that you guys are recommending? Is it once a year, once a quarter, once a month?
Yeah. So, when hired, and then once a year thereafter, kind of a longer day, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. And then thereafter, every month at least, that you have some small bit of training, 1 to 3 minutes, not long at all. Could even just be a poster or an email or something like that. And then at least once a month, a simulated phishing test. We've actually done tests. I'm getting ready to write another article. We should be approved to publish it soon. But we found that training that's once a year, that's what most of your security things go. You have to have end user training once a year. We found it has almost no impact on whether or not you'll be phished. It is as if you didn't have the training. Might as well not have the training. we don't start to see any significant decrease in risk till the training's at least once a quarter. We see a significant jump between a quarter and once a month. Once a month is a sweet spot. And if you do it once a week, it's even better, but it's incrementally better. Like you get to 5%, people that will be fished at once a month. And if you do it once a week, you can get that down between, 5% and 1% or something like that. But really the biggest jump is from 30% to 5% once you finally go to at least a quarter. So that's what we'd say is at least a quarter. Really, we recommend once a month with simulated fishing, at least once a month. If you're doing that, you're really doing good. And let me say, a lot of companies don't do simulated fishing. They're like, oh, I can't fish my end users. Let me say that used to be an argument. Today, it's just considered what most companies do. And it's actually, it's a part of the education, right? Like I could have been told, there's COVID scams out. It wasn't until I got successfully fake fished with some fake COVID emails that I realized, oh, this is somehow triggering me to clicking too fast. So sometimes you can be aware and still fall for it. We say you can be aware and not care or something like that. It was knowing that I finally realized I can be fished. And I think realizing I can be fished, funnily, in a reverse method makes me less likely to be fished.
Right.
Like even if I'm walking around in real life, if I'm being aware of my surroundings, just trying to see what people are doing and where I'm going. And I even remember one time I was in this one city and me and my wife were just trying to get to a really good place to eat. But I saw some dangerous characters. And I said, it was funny. I was like, oh, I'm just being prematurely nervous. But I said, if the city, I'm just going to go with the flow of the city. And I noticed this entire city, everybody stopped at this one block and turned off. Nobody went forward over the next 2 blocks. So I told my wife, I was like, you're going to sound funny, but I just don't feel comfortable. Later on, we found out it's one of the highest crime areas in the city and that everybody avoids that area. But, if you're not aware, if you're not looking, when I was in the city and we're sightseeing, I was being the same thing with emails until you're aware and trying to be skeptical and being aware that you could be fished is a really, that's a big part of it. When I thought I can't be fished, I'm too smart. And then let me say, smart has nothing to do with it. We have doctors, lawyers, dentists. There's a guy, a Nobel Prize winner, quantum physics prize winner, one of the smartest guys in the world. He lost $1 million to a social engineering scam because it isn't smartness. It really is awareness. And if somebody gets you in the right way, you may be susceptible to whatever, there's a scam where they'll call grandparents and say that the grandson's been arrested and that he needs bail money, and he said that he can't call mom and dad because they'll be mad. And grandparents oftentimes pay thousands of dollars. And, it's just being able to hit people when they're vulnerable in the right way, the right time. And I think most of us are going to spot a lot of scams, but I think, like when I learned that I had my trigger event, I finally went, I'm fishable. I am the guy that writes about not being fished is fishable. I think it made me a safer employee.
Right. The healthy level of skepticism.
Yeah, I had to be knocked down a peg myself. I remember even the first time I failed the first fishing test, I was like, ha ha ha, they got me on this trick. It wasn't until it happened the second time that I went, no, I'm fishable.
There is an old proverb that says pride comes before the fall. So that might be the case. Okay, so wrapping up here, Eric, I know we're getting into the Q&A session of it. Roger, any last comment before we get into the question time?
Yeah, there is no better way to defend yourself and your company than doing whatever you can not to be tricked by social engineering, whatever that means, whether it's policies or technical defenses, antivirus or whatever, and end user education to prevent being successfully hacked. And patch your software. Those 2 things, if you do those 2 things well and don't repeat your passwords, so those 3 things, that's 99% of the problem in most companies is social engineering, unpatched software, and password reuse.
So using a password manager.
I strongly recommend you use a password manager if you can.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, do you have any questions?
I do. I have a few questions here, Roger. Ready?
I am.
Can we start the timer, please? No. first, phishing but not clicking. Am I safe if I get a phishing email but I don't actually click any links? Is there no harm, no foul, no harm?
That's a great question. So most of the time, 99% of the time, if all you did was open the message, most of the time you're fine. There are some rare instances, and they come along time to time, where if you open the message, if you're unpatched, if there's what we call a 0-day, which is something that doesn't even have a patch available to it, and then a few other tricks that occasionally it might leak some information to the attacker, but they're really rare. Even though it's possible, it's almost so rare that you almost don't need to worry about it. But yeah, if you can avoid opening a phishing email, but a lot of times I have to open it just to see whether
Just
or
to
not,
see it.
yeah, and hover over the link. But most of the time, for most practical purposes, if you don't click on something, you don't download something or allow it to activate or something, you're most of the time going to be okay.
Right.
Is there a difference? Sorry, real quick.
Oh,
Is
no,
there a
no, go ahead. You're
difference-
first, Chad.
Is there a difference between previewing the email like in Outlook versus like double clicking and opening the email?
Yeah, for sure. Preview in most instances will significantly reduces your risk. But again, I'd probably say, so last year there were 20,142 different vulnerabilities announced. Maybe 2 of those would have been exploitable through the preview mode. So the vast majority of them are disabled when you're in preview mode, but there are some. So I don't want to say rare, but most of the time, if you're, especially if you think you have, if you think you have a possible phishing email, try to preview it if you can. Although if you come to, every once in a while, I'll teach a class and I'll show people how I can sometimes get to you through preview mode. But it's more of a rarity. I've got to do what's called chain attacks. And it's not what it's funny. The vast majority of hackers don't have to do the advanced stuff because the basic stuff is just working. Why hack hard when hacking easy works so well?
Right.
Right.
So for the most part, you have to click the link that's in the email or open the attachment that's in the email, something like that.
Yeah. And I would say, I know ways to do it so that I know a couple of tricks where you don't have to click the link. But and they have been used in real world attacks, but maybe 2 or 3 attacks that I know of in the world over 3 years. So they're really extremely rare to be used. And so what I tell, you've got to pick what you do and what you worry about. I would not worry about email that I just opened just because it's so rare. So there's a possibility, but very unlikely. There's always the unlucky soul that happens to hit the 0-day and didn't have the patch at the right time and that sort of stuff. So it does happen.
This will probably lead into this next question. We have email security software which connects to a sandbox server. Can you explain what a sandbox server is?
Sure. Yeah, I love sandboxes. So the sandbox attempts to you get an email, or it could be a text message, usually an email, and you go to click on it. But really what's happening is that email, any attachments or links are being opened in a safe area. There's the computer system or the security system is saying, I'm going to open this email or link or email attachment in a known safe area. And then they get to examine what happened. Did it try to install malware? Is it trying to modify my system? Sandboxes are really good and can help you. They're not 100%, just like antivirus isn't 100%, firewalls aren't 100%, VPNs aren't 100%, sandbox is not 100%. And there's always, the malware writers are always trying to think of ways to fool the most popular sandboxes. And it's kind of a back and forth battle. But anytime you have to take advantage of one, I think if you've got one, I would use it. I think, it's just another layer in defense in depth and trying to stop that stuff.
Right. So, and again, if you do click on a link and you are working with some process that involves a sandbox server, you're pretty safe, at least in that situation.
Yeah, the vast majority of the time. Usually, what will happen is if there is a failure, what's called a false negative, where it thinks it isn't malicious, what will happen is that they'll what do they call it? Execute. Detonate it. They detonate the link and the sandbox doesn't detect it correctly, and then it tells you, oh, the link's safe, and then you open it and something can happen to you. But they stop a whole lot of stuff, especially a lot of the scannable malware that doesn't have signatures and stuff like that. They'll actually look at what's called heuristics and behavior, and they'll go, hey, we don't know what this thing is, but it kind of has behavior that malware might have. It's trying to modify your system in a way that's kind of malware-like. And so they're good, but they're just not perfect. And that's what you don't want anybody to ever think that, I don't care what you're using, it sometimes they can fail. And that's why they say defense in depth, that you try to have multiple layers so that if something doesn't stop it, this other offsetting thing will. The better. So if you have a combination of things, the more likely you're going to be that one of them catches it.
Got it. All right. Here's another one. We work with a lot of independent contractors. How do I deal with that?
You really have to treat them the same as you would any employee from a computer security perspective. If you're sending your confidential data to a vendor, or a vendor's coming onto your network, whether it's physical or remote, they need to abide by the same level of security that you expect your employees in your network to abide by. It's not done nearly enough, but it should be. And like, as a matter of fact, I would recommend that if you have vendors that come into your system, that they have to take security awareness training, that they're aware of social engineering techniques, and that they know not to click, email links, and, that they should hover over links before they click them. So, that there is many companies that got compromised through their vendor. And, it's, what would the attacker say is try to find the weak link. So maybe you and your company are doing a really, really good job. But if I can compromise that vendor's laptop, and they come on into this more secure environment, well, it's game over. So yeah, that's a really common thing. There's different names for it, vendor management or something like that, or vendor risk-based management. And I would say that's that, and what's called supply chain attacks, where you really have to kind of pay attention to what software you're buying and installing. Those two things have gotten a much greater look at over the last couple of years, because there have been some big compromises because of vendors that were compromised. Some of the biggest compromises in the world during my time have been vendors that were compromised. Like they compromise, one of the biggest attacks against one of the biggest retailers in the world happened because the AC vendor didn't have a good password. And so they compromised the AC vendor's software. And from that, we're able to get on the corporate network and then take over. And then they installed malware that saved people's credit card information. And they ended up hacking millions of their, customers around the world. It's all because an AC vendor didn't put a good password on his AC interface.
Mm-hmm. Here's one. This is actually my question. A lot of times I'll get a phishing email, and I know it is because I don't even hover over a link. I look at, it says who it's from, but if I look at the email address, it's not, it might be Microsoft with a 0.com or something like that. But my question is, that's probably not always foolproof, right? Because people's accounts can get hacked, and then they could actually send an email from that account, correct?
Yeah. I think you're right. I almost don't even need to answer this. You answered it pretty perfectly, but
right. Yeah.
I think, if you hover over something, if you can't see the link and you hover, that's always a good thing. But yeah, for sure, we call it third-party compromise, or somebody you trust. And let me say, it's really common for hackers, when they break into an organization, to go through people's emails and see what existing emails they might be able to leverage. And they'll actually send out the phishing email from the person's real email account, and they'll create a filter that deletes the send and redirects any receive. So the person that's compromised doesn't even
know.
So that's why when I say two things, if the message arrives unexpectedly and it's asking you to do something for the first time, so the thing they're asking for the first time could be, open this document. It has to do with our project. Open this, and you're like, I've interfaced with this person before. They never just out of the blue sent me a PDF file to open. Yeah. That's where you can't. The old mentality used to be, if it comes from a strange email address or has a strange web link, and that is still true in most of the cases, but it's not something you can rely upon. So I would go back to, it's trying to get you to do something that you didn't. And let me say, I worked for Noble before. My world is full of people that were scammed by other people's compromised email accounts, right? On social media, somebody's like, I remember one of the saddest ones I ever heard was, it was a group of retired military people, and they were really old, like 70, 80, 90 years old. Really, I'm almost 70.
Mm.
But they were older, and they must have been really old because they fought in Korea or something. But one of the guy's accounts got compromised and started sending out social media messages on Twitter and Facebook saying, "Oh, I got this loan for vets, for retired vets, where you can just get $1 million and you never have to pay it back, or $100,000." And the person contacted was a daughter of one of the men, said, I found out other victims, and we can't convince the group that this loan program is fake. And it was really
Wow.
sad trying to talk to them, and say, listen, that's just a compromised account from your buddy. He can't even get the account back. They're like, no, it's Mac. Mac, he's one of the great guys of our company. And, and I'm, the only reason I haven't been able to get the money back is I had errors in my bank account, and I'm getting ready to call him back and give him my up-to-date bank account information. And you're like, no.
Oh my God.
And by the way, when scammers go after older people, I think that they should get double the penalty if we ever catch them. And I think that an old person should be able to punch them in the face. I don't believe in violence. That's why it should only be an old person. But I think it should be a little extra special thing for them. They should just one good punch in the noggin from an old person, just extra, before you put him in prison.
Amen to that. Amen. I agree. Roger, thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this. And Chad, thank you as always. Gentlemen, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I got one. If you're listening to this and you need more information, please reach out to us at PulseOne. You can also reach out to Roger, but we use KnowBe4 and all their technology. We use it internally, and we have our clients use it. So if you're interested, please reach out, and we can help set up all the training, your company needs.
Fabulous. Well put. And our security series continues every Wednesday through November 16th. And next week, we're going to be talking with John McLaughlin, who is the CEO of GuardSight, about how to actually determine your company's security risk level. Same bat time, same bat channel. And like Chad said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either him or myself. And here is our website information. And again, that's it. So be sure to come see us next week, Roger.
Be well,
be safe down there. Yeah.
Thanks, Roger.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So y'all are great individuals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.